Finally here, everyone. Saw, the feature length which started my journey down the rabbit hole that is the horror genre. Shot across 18 days on a budget of $1.2 million, James Wan and Leigh Whannell released a masterpiece which took the industry by storm, grossing over $100 million to become one of the most profitable horrors since 1996's Scream, and has deservedly amassed a worldwide cult following. Saw had a profound effect on many of its viewers. I watched the film when I was only 11 years old, and yes, you probably guessed, it fueled my nightmares for the decades to come. But I was hooked on Saw from my first viewing, and somebody in my class at school managed to convince their parents to buy them a copy from HMV, and I have lots of fond memories of watching it on repeat over and over to soak in every detail of every scene. There's something about the first Saw film which gets my synapses firing differently, and my aim for this episode is to present my ideas as to why it's had such a profound effect on the horror space and why the nightmare fuel is still burning strong in this one. I think one of the most understated contributions of the success of Saw was the environment which many of the scenes were built around. The DNA of old school Saw lies in its grittiness. Have you ever found yourself in a rundown underground car park late at night where there's paint peeling off the pillars, the roof is leaking, the walls are damp, there's a stale smell of urine, and everything is just a little bit disgusting? Well, that's the kind of vibe that I get from Saw in the early installments of the franchise. In my opinion, Jigsaw's tests are so much more gruesome in Saw 1, which I guess in part could also stretch to Saw 2 as well, because they're so simple and so stripped back. John Kramer relied on his nous for predicting human behaviour and skill as a mechanical engineer to improvise and fashion contraptions out of any materials he could get his hands on. The true horror comes from the fact that someone could probably replicate this in real life. Like, a kidnapping could take place, I could be chained to a pipe, and if I don't follow the commands of my capturer, I'm going to be left there to die slowly of dehydration. There's a sense of legitimacy and authenticity in Saw that's undeniably absent from the later films. Many of the scenes are dark, claustrophobic, dirty, and cold. The traps are confined to derelict buildings that are hidden from public view. The bathroom test for me has to be the most iconic trap in the series. Adam Stanheidt and Lawrence Gordon are the unfortunate victims of this game and are tested in an abandoned underground restroom. Their ankles are shackled to large reinforced plumbing pipes. There's debris everywhere. There's feces in the toilet. Look at the dirt on Adam's feet here. Look at the rust that covers the tiles and bottom of the bathtub. A particular part of the room which has always stood out to me over the years was the pipe that sits behind Lawrence. Just look at it. It looks like it's got a 2-inch thick coating of diarrhea running down it. You'd probably catch hepatitis in this room if you spent any more than 5 minutes inside of it, never mind having to endure it for a full day. Everything on screen is just carefully placed to repel us as viewers and instill discomfort. Lawrence is even wearing a blue t-shirt which complements the wishy-washy colour palette of this even further. This room is just cold and there's nothing comforting about the situation. As viewers, we spend the best part of an hour of the movie's runtime in this environment with Lawrence and Adam. We get to know their backstories, where things went wrong for them, and why they ultimately ended up in this situation. The character development is on point here, and big shout out to Leigh Whannell, who played Adam and co-wrote the script alongside James Wan. I've said it before on the channel, but what I love about Saw is how it's present in a static location for the majority of the film. It puts us as viewers in the bathroom with Adam and Lawrence. It's impossible not to watch Saw and try to guess how you'd escape the trap. And because it's not a 60-second torture porn montage like most of its successors, you're afforded time to ask yourself these questions, and we become more invested in the survival of our two protagonists. With both men failing their tests and thus yielding their key to freedom, the climax of the film comes down to being desperate. Who has the sheer bottle to saw their own leg off? It's a simple yet brutal resolution to escaping the bathroom, and it's the perfect horrifying conclusion to a long drawn out test. I mean, sawing your leg off wouldn't take seconds, it would take a long time. It's a strenuous manual act, and performing this kind of procedure on your own leg is just barbaric. There's a cut in this particular scene to the cop chase between Zepp and Tap, which allows time to very naturally pass on screen in what is a frenetic, horrifying moment, creating that feeling that Lawrence has been hacking away for an extended period of time. The audio is just harrowing. Lawrence's long but muffled screams make you cringe and wince as he endures his self-inflicted torture. The trap is nightmare-inducing, and there's a beautiful simplicity in its concept and conclusion. The first scene of the film shows a glowing key floating in the bath around Adam's head. All he had to do was use the key on his chain and he could walk right out the door. As Lawrence crawls out of the bathroom into a network of dimly lit tunnels, Adam's impending doom becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. As Jigsaw says on his tape, if he fails his test,
I'll leave you in this room to rot.
But my point around atmosphere extends to many of the other traps found in the early Saw films. The reverse bear trap, which is synonymous with Amanda's first test, takes place in pretty much a pitch black room. The only source of light is a dim lamp which leans over her head, only serving the purpose of injecting more pressure into the situation. Combine this with erratic camera movements and you've got a classic staple Saw trap which has been a household favourite since the early 2000s. The pacing is the exact opposite of the bathroom segments, but the shared similarities which contribute to why this trap is also nightmare fuel. There's an industrious mechanical feel to Amanda's test which crosses over from the bathroom. We learn in the later installments that John Kramer was an accomplished mechanical engineer and clearly possessed a talent for upcycling downtrodden objects and converting them into purposeful assets. This is ever present with the reverse bear trap headset. If we examine it more closely, it resembles the appearance of an old deep sea diver mask which has been redeveloped into this murder contraption. The craftsmanship of the reverse bear trap is just downright scary. There's no over-engineering to its makeup. It's a tool which perfectly serves the purpose of either taking, or in Jigsaw's words, saving lives. The exposed mechanics of the mask offer a full, real-time view of how it operates to the audience. Amanda states in her policing interview,
"All I could taste was blood and metal."
You just can't escape that undertone of grotty heavy machinery, can you? Kramer's lateral placement of the industrious tension-bearing cogs depicts the face of a clock and thus stands as a metaphor for the essence of time. Amanda's test saw an evolution in the opening of Saw 2 as Michael wakes up in the Venus flytrap, which was effectively a sister test designed to snap shut inwards as opposed to dismantling the head outwards. Michael's test induced the same atmosphere as Amanda's did. Pay attention to the similarities in the room, the fact that this mask is also on a spring-loaded cable, which again serves as a metaphorical representation for a lifeline. But there's another similarity between this test and the other tests in the first Saw film, which I've been subconsciously aware of for many years, but it's not until I dissected this further that I could truly appreciate how this nuance made the game so much more terrifying. I want to draw your attention to the use of green light. Once you see it, you just can't stop noticing it, and it's a work of absolute genius when sculpting the atmosphere. The colour green typically alludes to feelings of hope and new life, which epitomises John Kramer's philosophy of testing his victims to give them a chance to be reborn again. But on the other hand, a more washed out pastel green, which we see as the backdrop for the majority of the early Saw traps, brings on feelings of nausea and nervousness. This extends to the barbed wire trap, which was in a basement, and the flammable jelly trap, which again took place in a dark, sealed, solid room with exposed brick on the wall with nothing but a candle for light. They're all shrouded in this green tint. You always feel like the bodies of those who lost their games will remain in silo for a while, with the locations being so remote with little to no information about them. Now that I've dissected this to within an inch of its life, let's just contrast this to the public execution found in Saw 3D. Nah, just shut up. The flippin' sun's shining. You can see Sports Direct's closing down sale in the background. This just isn't Saw. There's a fear-inducing atmosphere in Saw 1 and parts of Saw 2 that is just iconic. The later installments just fail to replicate this on every level, and the series was perhaps a victim of its own success. A bigger budget almost never equates to a better film. But I want to know what you feel down in the comments about the early Saw films. Do you like their stripped-back nature, or do you enjoy the more over-the-top approach to the latest films? As ever, I've been Hugh from Unleash the Ghouls.
Game over.